Hey there, friends. David Paulides, Canadian Missing Project. This is the executive producer, Huck L. Berry. Yes, Huck is right here. That is her picture. It's her TV channel. You're seeing her do something that you don't see very often, and that's her putting her paw up under to keep it warm. It's actually been a really cold day up here. And when you see her do that, you know it's even cold in the old Davo household. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. He's a good girl. He's a good puppy. You're a good girl. Yeah. He's a good girl. Yes, sir. You smell? Yeah, good girl. Yeah, it's a good girl. Yes, you are. She's a good girl. We had some guys come by today to shut the water off at the house for the lawn and sprinklers, and they flush the pipes so they don't freeze. And Huck went out there and growled at one of them. And then I went up there, put my arm around him. We made friends. She went over, finally made friends with him, but she initially didn't really like the guy. And that's pretty unusual, huh? Yeah, but you were a good girl. Yes, you were a good girl. You made friends with him. I like that. Yeah, good girl. So Huck will hang out with us as we make our way through this very interesting video today. Involves an area that we haven't gone too much in the last 6 months. Northern Minnesota, kind of up near the Canadian border. I spent a lot of time there when Ben was going to hockey camp in Brainerd, Minnesota. And I'd go out there and stay with him for the week. And then during the day, I'd drop him off. And then if they had a game, a practice game or an exhibition game during the day, I would of course go. But during his skills and training, etc., he was on his own. And I would take off and I'd go to the reservations up north. And then I'd go to some of the remote regions up there, which were pretty scary, honestly. One of the few times I've been really apprehensive about going anywhere alone was far northern Minnesota, kind of near the Boundary Waters, which is where we're going to talk about today. Now, when I've been there, unsolicited, people would talk to me about the preponderance of UFO sightings, Bigfoot sightings, and missing people all in one breath. And there had been a lot of missing people in that area of Minnesota. And some of the most bizarre stories I've ever written about occurred in that area as well. So the stories I'm talking about today happened in 2005 and 2 cases in 2025, all in the Boundary Waters area or right on the border of the Boundary Waters wilderness. So the first case involves a man named Jean Doherty, 40 years old, went missing July 2nd of this year, 2025. He was the youngest of 8 kids in his family. This is Jean. Born and raised in Minnesota. And he was an athlete. Even at 40 years old, he was in decent shape. And when he was younger, played a lot of sports, but he was especially good in football. And in fact, in 2002, he led his Hutchinson High School to a state football championship. He was a running back. He was described by his family and friends as being extremely generous, to the point that he'd give you the shirt off his back if you needed it. And you know, we talk about kindness here a lot. And really, when you do something when no one's looking, to me, it's kind of the cornerstone of kindness. Gene was that kind of guy. family also said he was a huge Guns N' Roses fan. Yeah, so am I. And loves the outdoors. So do I. And he especially loved what Minnesota had to offer. What does Minnesota have? 10,000 lakes. Great fishing. There's so many lakes you'll probably never fish them all in a lifetime. He'd been divorced for about 5 years, but he and his ex-wife were still close. And in fact, they talked regularly. To me, that says a lot about somebody. It actually says a lot about both people in the relationship. You can separate, no kids are involved, you still talk regularly. That's rare. Well, 2 summers ago, he worked on a fishing boat out on the Great Lakes. He loved it. And he got hurt, so he couldn't do the fishing boat thing anymore this last summer in July. So, starting in the springtime, he got a job working as the groundskeeper for Superior National Golf Course in Lutzen, Minnesota. Groundskeepers are pretty good jobs. It was kind of a small town away from things, probably pretty peaceful. His family said that during his life he had minor bouts of depression, but there was nothing ever serious. Now think about that for a second. Think about that statement. I could honestly say in my life I've had bouts of depression. I bet most people in their lives have had bouts of depression. Really, the cornerstone of that is, do you bounce back? Do you work through it? Do you look to get help for it? Somebody says someone has bouts of depression. I really don't put a lot of emphasis on that. Serious depression, where you have to get put in a facility, you have to take medication, that's a little different. But just occasional bout of depression, life can be depressing. Well, in July 1st of this year, Jean went to visit his mom in Silver Bay, Minnesota. And every place he went, he took his dog with him. Well, this was kind of weird. His dog's name was Ben. That perked me up, and I was paying attention. And the family said that he and Ben were tight. And again, Jean loved to fish, and when he went fishing, there was Ben. That's his dog right there on the boat. That's kind of the way Huck is when I go out fishing. She wants to know, what's going on? What are you bringing on board? Can I chew on it? Yeah. I love that. I love this picture of Jean and Ben. Well, so he brought his dog over, spent some time talking to his mom. And his mom said that the conversation wasn't too serious and it wasn't too intense. It was just kind of normal. And then he said he was going to leave, and he left Ben behind. And the family said it was just odd that he'd leave the dog there. Nothing obscene happened. Nothing outrageous. There was no big arguments. There was no threats of anything bad. That's just kind of the way it went. So he took off. There was never anything stated about where he was going. But the next day, the family tried to get a hold of him. And anytime the family tried to get a hold of him, he'd pick up, he'd answer, he'd talk. Well, he didn't come back for Ben, which was really unusual. And when his family tried to get a hold of him, they couldn't get a hold of him. And that was really nerve-wracking and concerning. He was last seen driving away from his mom's house in a 2009 dark blue Ford Edge with a Minnesota license plate of SHS 838. Well, the mom called in a missing person report, and the police entered that license plate into NCIC as associated with a missing person. That was on June 2nd. Well, they went by his place, they talked to his friends, nobody heard from him. And then that was on July 2nd. On July 11th, Jean's car is found. And it appeared abandoned on a place called Bruce Lake Road, near a place called The Grade. And it was adjacent to Lake Cascade in Minnesota. Locals said, and the reason somebody called it in is that it appeared it had been there probably more than a week, since probably July 3rd. Well, the Cascade County Sheriff came out, ran the license plate, found it was associated with a missing person, contacted the family, got the story. The U.S. Forest Service was out in this area as well, so the Cascade County Sheriff and the U.S. Forest Service teamed together, and they started a search and rescue immediately. So they didn't know if somebody just went for a hike and got hurt. They didn't know anything. But when you're a week behind somebody who had parked their car and they're out in the wilderness somewhere, it's life or death now. Because let's pretend that you broke your leg and you couldn't move. Life or death. You have 4 days. The manuals say you have 4 days you can live without water, and then you're going to die. Well, they took that to heart, and the U.S. Forest Service and the sheriff poured in resources, and they brought out some canines. Well, the car was on this dirt road right next to this lake. So the sheriff's office has their canine team go down to the lake, and the dog picked up the scent of Jean on the boat dock and on the beach adjacent to the boat dock. Cascade County then contracted with a private company to side scan the lake to see if Jean was in it. Well, they side scanned the lake for 2 days. It's not that big of a lake, and they didn't find anything. And they felt like everyone else, after a few days, the body's going to surface. Nobody ever surfaced. And the sheriff said at the time that just because we have the scent on the dock and the scent on the beach doesn't mean that anyone went in the water. As an example, if I pulled over right there, I'd for sure walk out on the dock. To me, I'm looking for fish. Look off the dock, see if you see any fish, see what the water clarity's like. Just see what's up. Then take a walk on the beach. That's something I'd do. That's probably something Jean did. Now, this area is right on the edge of the Boundary Waters Canoe Wilderness. And as the searchers started their effort to look for Jean, thunderstorms hit that area and thwarted their efforts. And the sheriff made an interesting statement in the middle of this. He said that there was a distinct lack of searchers available to do the work. That is not good. I rarely hear this, but when I've told you before that if you can join a search and rescue team, please do it. Everybody needs searchers. People go on vacation, people go on out of town, people are sick, people just can't do search and rescue sometimes because of family issues or work issues. So they always need backup. and they didn't have it. So July 15th through the 17th, ground pounders covered the area around the car. They kept moving in an outward pattern. Air support was utilized just one day because of weather. They didn't see anything. July 18th, search and rescue suspended their efforts because of weather and lack of resources. That is depressing. Now, it's a pretty remote area, and that's part of the issue. So this is far northern Minnesota. The Canadian border is right up in this area right here. This is the area that they were searching. This is Devil's Track Lake. Remember we talked about how lakes and areas get their name? How did that get their name? And here's some cities down here on the Great Lake. And trust me, friends, all this area through here, lots of missing people. We were talking about 3 of them today, but there's way more than that I've talked about in my books. On July 18th, the sheriff said that they had to suspend search and rescue operations because they didn't have any more help. The family did a GoFundMe in an effort to continue the search on their own. And they continued it for a multi-day effort by private searches. They found nothing. And then it just really ticks me off when sheriffs say the following: Jean may be having a mental health crisis. How does he know that? The family never said it. None of his friends ever said it. No, I know why they say it, so they could just kind of wash their hands of the whole thing. Oh, he probably just, took his life, so that's why I can quit. There is no reason to say it. But it bothers me because I couldn't find anything to support it. So get this, Jean loved the outdoors, specifically fishing. The family stated that he had a serious ankle injury when he was on a commercial fishing boat that prevented him from going back to that fishing boat. So I got a question. He has a serious ankle injury. How far can he hike? How has he missed? Why hasn't he been found? And then, this wasn't mentioned anywhere, but I have a question. Did he take a fishing pole? Maybe he was going fishing in Cascade Lake. Nobody ever said that possibility. So dogs couldn't find him. And they were on that scent trail for a long time. He disappeared adjacent to water. And if you're paying close attention, this is another disappearance where there was thunder involved. To me, that's important. And in fact, some of you who are into the UFO realm have told me that UFOs often happen during thunder, right around thunder. Well, I find that fascinating. So Dave did a little work on his own. And this is a picture I took from my house looking up towards the mountains. And it had just, a lightning bolt just went through there. The local airport is closed. And there's no aircraft in this area because lightning, thunder, and wind shear. I took this picture and look at that. Right after the lightning bolt, I showed this to like 2 or 3 people and they said, Dave, that is super weird. And I did that not trying to catch a UFO. I was actually trying to catch the lightning bolt. And when I lived in Colorado, I was able to do it a few times. I've been able to do it here, but that picture was one of the strangest ones I've ever taken. So, that's Jean Doherty, 40 years old, missing July 2nd of this year, 2025. Never been found. The next case involves a man named Lloyd Skelton. This is Lloyd. 58 years old, missing June 9th, 2005. From Angleworm Lake, Minnesota, reported missing June 17th, 2005. He's lived in Minnesota and Wisconsin. Incident happened about 10 miles northwest of Ely, Minnesota. It's a pretty interesting story. So Lloyd was an optimum outdoorsman, almost classified as an expert kayaker. He had a van. And what he would do is he would load up his van, put the kayak on top, sleep in the van, and drive to locations in kayak and camp. He was single. And on June 2nd, he told his daughter and friends that he was leaving in his van to go kayak the Boundary Waters, which he had done 25 times before. He was very experienced at the kayaking and outdoors, and very experienced with the Boundary Water wilderness. And in fact, he was so experienced that nobody questioned, don't go alone. He always went alone. Now, Lloyd's background was he had an engineering degree from the University of Minnesota. For over a decade, he was a software engineer for one company. He was born in Springfield, Missouri. And people would consider him a very well-traveled man. Been to Cuba, Greenland, Alaska. His favorite park to visit was Grand Teton. Well, Lloyd told the family that he'd be gone for a week. After a week, family didn't hear from him. But nobody in the family was concerned because he was such an outdoorsman and they knew he could take care of himself. No big deal. Lesson number 1. When somebody says they're going to be gone for a week, on the 8th day, maybe give them a leeway 1 day. 9th day, you're calling search and rescue. And you tell the people that. Say, I'm not giving you a week leeway. If you're going 2 days overboard, I'm calling. You need to get a hold of me if you're going to stay longer than that. Well, finally on June 17th, the family reported him missing. And the law enforcement entered his van into the National Computer Information System. Well, a local was driving down a dirt road, place that he went often, and he saw Lloyd's van parked about 10 miles northwest of Ely, Minnesota, near Angleworm Lake. And it had been there for several days. Kayak was still on the roof, so it didn't make sense. So they called the police and called the Forest Service. Well, they came out, ran the license plate. It came back to Lloyd, a missing person. Well, they're a little perplexed because the kayak is on the roof. Well, the U.S. Forest Service runs his name through their system, and they find, so remember, family lost home on June 2nd. He was supposed to be home June 9th. So the Forest Service runs his name through their system, and they find out that he went to a local outfitter to buy a wilderness hiking permit for hiking onto Angleworm Lake. Now, just so you know, Forest Service has these permits. Most of the time you don't have to pay for them. I guess he had to here. And they're really not to keep track of who's going in and who's going out. It's really to see how much pressure is on a certain area of the forest. I've been told this multiple times. So when they found this and they determined that where he was, I was amazed. Now they went back and they interviewed the outfitter who gave him the permit. And the outfitter said that Lloyd told him, yeah, I was going to go kayaking in there, but the weather's so horrible, I guess I'm going to go hiking and I need a permit. Outfitter said, yeah, it's a bummer, but yeah, you do need one. And he bought it. And he was going to go to Angleworm Lake. Now, Angleworm, I looked it up on many hiking websites, and it said that it's a small lake used mostly by locals for ice fishing for trout in the winter. But there wasn't a lot of pressure on it or a lot of interest in it during the summer. I thought, yeah, that's weird. But I get it. So the Forest Service and the sheriff put a lot of resources right around the van. So on July 19th, searchers were off trail, which is smart. You don't just walk the trail looking for people if you're a searcher. They're off trail between Whiskey Jack Lake and Alpine Worm Lake. And they make an odd find. They report that they find a series of clothing kind of scattered on the ground. Shoes. And then they find the wallet. Lloyd's wallet. I'm not sure what I'd make of that. If there was money in the wallet, I would eliminate robbery. They never said if there was money in the wallet. But they brought in every searcher to that area because now they've determined that's Lloyd's stuff. So they bring in all the canines. Search and rescue commanders have a meeting. And they tell the press. The searchers tell the press that he would be found in close proximity to his clothes. And their theory was he got hypothermia and he started stripping his clothes. I have a question. If he started to get cold, why not just walk back to the van? This wasn't winter. It wasn't snowing. Why not just hop, skip, and a jump back to the van? Nobody says this stuff. Well, they put in big resources into this area. And for 3 days, they kept searching it, moving out with the search zone, bringing canines, bringing cadaver dogs. They don't find him. Well, son of a gun. They said he'd find him right near there. What happened? Well, they kept moving that search outward, and they didn't find a body. I think they would say that's bizarre. I don't find it bizarre. I don't necessarily think the body's there. On June 22nd, the search and rescue commanders call off the search. Now, July, August, and September, hundreds of people hiked that trail, went through that area. And if there was a body nearby, it would stink to high heavens because the humidity in Minnesota is very high and that odor would reek in that area. Because searchers told them that Lloyd's probably dead, the family on July 1st had a memorial service for him. Hasn't been found. Nobody knows where he went. Lloyd Skelton. Very, very unusual case. Now, the angleworm area, this is Ely, Minnesota, right here. Eagle's Nest, Murray, Winton. This area out here has 1,000 lakes. They have water everywhere. Remember what I've told you about these areas. You get that much water in an area, and you're going to have a lot of missing people and a lot of unusual stuff happening. Trust me on that. The next case. All three of these cases occurred either in or right on the border of the Boundary Waters Wilderness. Now, first case happened in 2025. The last case happened in 2005. This next case, just a month ago, September 18th, 2025. This is the man, Wayne Storch, 74 years old, missing September 18th, 2025. The Pine Mountain Lake Trailhead, right on the border of the Boundary Waters Wilderness. Wayne is a former Marine, and he was a cook. And later in life, he loved to cook, and he cooked for a lot of people. His vehicle was a gray 2020 Ford Escape with Wisconsin plates. On the back of the car, there was a Marine sticker. Now, Wayne loved the outdoors and had gone to the Gunflint Trail and hiked many times over 30 years. Now, that's somebody who really loves it. What happened was Wayne's oldest daughter couldn't contact him. The story is very murky and hard to follow even for me when I spent hours trying to drag facts out of it. Fact is, he hasn't been found. Now, daughter couldn't contact him, and it appears the daughter called him in as a missing person. So Wayne's car is reported as abandoned adjacent to the Gunflint Trail is where it's found. The Gunflint Trail in close proximity to a place called Elbow Lake. So here's Elbow Lake. Now remember, the other disappearance happened right over here. This one's right here. Right along the Great Lakes. Remember, the Great Lakes, so much strangeness associated with them over the years, I can't even begin to tell you. Well, the Cook County Sheriffs determined that Wayne's car had been there for several days. And they did the search. Again, it's Cook County Sheriffs and the St. Louis County Search and Rescue did the majority of the search. And the specifics of the search are very vague. They did say that they searched Pickerel Lake, Elbow Lake, and Pine Mountain Lake. All of those areas around them were searched. Now what they said is that all three of those lakes were within hiking distance of a location Wayne could get to. Very few details are available, but posters are up talking about Wayne being missing at the cities I just talked to you about. Searchers have found nothing. Frustrating. Now, this is one of those rare times where we get three cases in the same essential wilderness area. Very odd. I don't consider that odd specifically for Minnesota because there's so many oddities about that area. And over the years, it's been pretty consistent. Now this, having two cases, one July of 2025 and another in September 2025, that's a little close. And until law enforcement or the press gets interested in talking about this, no one's going to get it. They're going to make these subtle accusations. Oh, it could be mental illness. Oh, it could be a heart failure. Oh, who knows? Remember, local reports for local consumption. And unfortunately, these rural sheriff's departments can get away with this stuff because there isn't a big news organization nearby to take them on. And when you're just a little one horse and pony news org for a little newspaper in a small town, they don't want to ruffle any feathers, so they don't want to challenge these people about what they're saying. It's unfortunate. That's why I think this will continue for decades into the future. So I want to thank you for being here. You are appreciated. The number of people that have told me in the last 3 weeks that they've been unsubscribed and they're not getting notifications is off the chart. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're getting the notifications. And go watch our movie trailer. It's going to be released. The movie will be released December 1st. And the premiere is November 28th in Tacoma, Washington at the Tacoma Convention Center. That'll be it. That'll be something to be to. And again, the name of the movie is American Sasquatch, Man, Myth, or Legend. I'm sorry, Man, Myth, or Monster. Wake up, Dave. I've said it a million times the last few days. So anyhow, be safe, whatever you're going to do. Be kind. Kindness costs nothing. And if you are having a mental health crisis, please contact NAMI, N-A-M-I. Get on there, attend an online course. I would encourage you to drive down. There's NAMI locations all over the U.S. But if you can't, if it's too far away, get online. They are fantastic. They will help you. Paulides out.